Karen's eyes bulged, her hands balling into fists. You can't be serious. I shrugged. Fine. Enjoy the blackout. The murmurs in the crowd grew louder. A few people whispered to each other, agreeing that maybe it wasn't such a bad idea. Then a man named Jeff, who had been fined last month for having an unauthorized garden gnome, stepped forward. You know what? I second that. Let's vote. Karen whirled around. What? Jeff crossed his arms. A vote. Right now. All in favor of Karen resigning. One by one, hands started going up. Slowly at first, then more confidently. Karen's face twisted in horror. You ungrateful traitors, she shrieked. The last hand went up. The decision was clear. Karen stood there, fuming, shaking, unable to process what had just happened. I didn't say another word. Instead, I pulled out my phone and tapped a single button. And the lights came back on. For everyone except Karen's house. Karen stood frozen in the middle of the street, her expression flickering between disbelief and outrage as the entire neighborhood around her lit up, except for her house. Porch lights glowed, street lamps hummed back to life, TVs flickered on behind curtains, and the warm buzz of electricity returned to every home but hers. People cheered, relieved that the blackout was finally over. But Karen? She was still stuck in the dark, both literally and figuratively. She spun around to face me, eyes burning with fury. Turn my power back on. Right now. I took my time sipping the last of my beer before answering. No. A vein in her forehead pulsed. This is illegal. You can't cut off my electricity just because you feel like it. I smiled. I didn't cut off your electricity. The grid's back on. Everyone else has power. If your house isn't getting any, well, maybe you should check with the HOA. Oh wait, you were the HOA. A ripple of laughter passed through the gathered homeowners. Karen's face flushed red with embarrassment, but she wasn't done yet. She stormed back toward her house, yanking out her phone. I'll get an electrician over here. You won't get away with this. I waited, casually leaning against my porch railing as she furiously tapped on her phone, calling every electrician in town. It only took about 5 minutes before she stomped back down the street, her entire body radiating frustration. They're all booked, she gritted out. 4 weeks. I pretended to be surprised. That's crazy. Almost like no one wants to deal with HOA nonsense. Who would have thought? The truth was, I had spoken to a few electricians earlier in the day. I simply let them know they might get a panicked call from a certain power-abusing ex-president, and that, if they valued their sanity, they might want to be unavailable for a while. They had all happily agreed. After all, Karen had fined half the service industry for ridiculous things like parking too long in a driveway or using a ladder that was the wrong color. The realization that she was completely alone seemed to dawn on her. Without her title, without power, without anyone willing to fix her problem, she had nothing left to stand on. She was used to ruling this neighborhood with an iron fist, but that fist was now trembling. Neighbors started whispering to one another, some openly mocking her. A few even walked up to me to shake my hand, thanking me for putting an end to Karen's reign of terror. Meanwhile, she was pacing, chewing her lip like she was trying to find some kind of loophole to dig herself out of this mess. Then, like a cornered animal, she tried one last desperate move. I'll sue you. I tilted my head. For what? She hesitated, then jabbed a finger in my direction. For cutting off my power. You're violating some kind of law. There has to be something illegal about this. I sighed dramatically. Karen. I own the power grid, remember? There's no law that says I have to supply power to a private property. Especially one that violated my property rights first. If anything, I could sue you for destruction of my solar panels. Actually, you know what? I think I will. Her jaw nearly hit the pavement. You wouldn't dare. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. Filing the claim right now. Shouldn't be too hard. I've got security footage of the crew you hired tearing my property apart. Might as well send it over to the cops while I'm at it. Vandalism, destruction of private property. That's gotta be, what, a few thousand in damages. Karen's breath hitched. And since you're no longer HOA president, I assume you'll have to cover the costs yourself. Oh, and don't forget the replacement panels you agreed to pay for. Should be a hefty bill. Silence stretched between us. For the first time since I moved into this neighborhood, Karen looked small, defeated. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. The gears were turning in her head. She wasn't just out of power. She was out of options. Finally, she did what I never thought I'd see. She turned around, shoulders slumped, and walked away. Not another word. Just the sound of her shoes scraping against the pavement as she disappeared into her dark, powerless house. The crowd started dispersing, people laughing and chatting as they returned to their homes. Jeff, the guy with the gnome collection, clapped me on the back. That was the most satisfying thing I've ever seen. Glad I could help, I said with a grin. Over the next few days, Karen kept a low profile. Without the HOA backing her up, she was just another homeowner, one without electricity at that. She tried appealing to some of the neighbors, but no one was interested in helping her. The people she had spent years bullying had no sympathy for her situation. Then, one morning, I woke up to see a moving truck in her driveway. She was leaving. By noon, the truck was packed, and she stood outside one last time, looking around at the neighborhood she had once controlled. When her eyes met mine, there was no smugness left. Just bitter resignation. She didn't say goodbye. Just got into her car and drove off. That night, I made one final adjustment to the power grid. Karen's house lit up again, but it was too late for her to enjoy it. A few weeks later, with the HOA under new management, I installed a new solar panel system. This time, reinforced and under legal protection that not even the HOA could touch. The neighborhood felt different now. Lighter. Freer. People started putting up decorations without fear of fines. Kids played in yards without Karen barking at them to stay off the grass. The ridiculous rules vanished. To celebrate, I hosted a neighborhood barbecue. For the first time in years, people actually came together, not out of obligation, but because they wanted to. It was a good night. And just for fun, I installed one last addition, a solar-powered spotlight, aimed directly at Karen's old house. It switched on every night at sunset, bathing the empty property in a warm, golden glow. A reminder of what happens when you mess with the wrong guy.